So we talked about this in our last section. We said, and then that was not where I wanted to go. We talked about this in our last section, and we said that one of the things that happens because of the Industrial Revolution is that there's a growth in cities, that people start leaving the farms, the Lord's Manor, and living as peasants, or in the United States, we had a farm-based society with slave labor, right? And a lot of people start to move to the cities. In the United States, the cities were in the Northeast. So cities like New York, Boston, and Philly start to grow dramatically during this period. In Europe, cities like London, Paris, Berlin start to grow dramatically. Amsterdam, northern Italian cities like Venice and Genoa. Um, and the reason is, well, because there is more food, so there's less people that need to work on the farm to make enough food, but also because this is where the jobs are. So if you want to get out of that life of a peasant, serfdom is ending in a lot of places, especially in Western Europe. You're now free to leave if you want. You can go to the city and you can get a job working in a factory. We're going to see that cities' populations dramatically increase during this period. And so does the quality of life in these cities, that when so many people come all at once, that the cities become really undesirable places to live. Because of this, we find a new class in society, right? Historically, we had our top 1%, our nobles and our maybe our clergy. We have maybe this, we talked about the bourgeoisie, this growing business owner class that was growing in the 1700s. And a lot of these bourgeoisie are the factory owners. They invest in factories and they start to hire these lower level people to work in their factories. But here's the thing. In the cities, we have an upper class business owner, the bourgeoisie, a lot of the nobility and the clergy, they're not in the cities, they're not as influential. And we're going to find this kind of industrial working class, which is a lower class in the cities. But they're not really peasants anymore. Okay, this is a new class in society. There are new levels that need to be made to describe these people because they don't fit into the mold that we have seen for 1,000+ years in Europe. Now, a lot of these factories are going to hire the cheapest workers possible. And what we're going to see is that child labor becomes a big problem in Europe. We're going to, I mean, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, 66% of these workers were women and children. They were working 12 to 16 hours a day in dirty factories. Okay, there are stories of children who are who are sleepy. 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds. My daughter's 6. You see her sometimes, she might be on the verge of working. And if she's not working hard, they're going to grab her by her feet and dunk her in freezing cold water. They will beat her and force these kids to work crazy hard. This was a really, really bad time to be a factory worker, the way they were taken advantage of. And the reason, of course, why is because you can pay them less. Do factories ever do that today? Why, of course they do, right? But because of child labor laws and all of these things that have been put into place, the minimum wage, now we're seeing jobs being, one way to get cheap labor is to have it made in another country. You know, when I was a kid, the move made in China movement began. And now China's too expensive to make stuff there. Now they're making stuff in Vietnam and Indonesia and these other third world countries where you can pay workers still very, very little. But just to give you an idea, in 1833, there was a law passed in England that set the minimum age for children at 9. And what that means is that before 1833 in England, there were a lot of children working who were under 9 years old. I mean, you guys would all be working. You have a bunch of work under your belt by this point if you were city livers during the Industrial Revolution. a bunch. Um, in 1844, laws were passed limiting the amount of hours women could work, but men could still be worked 6 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. What kind of life is that? Right? You're working your whole life away so you can have enough money to feed your belly and sleep somewhere and maybe take care of your family. And because of this poor treatment of workers in this time period, say 1750, really starting up heavy in 1800 to about the year 1850, a movement begins. And it's a movement that says, these factory owners, they got to stop. Okay, they have to stop mistreating their workers. And people start envisioning a society where the business owners couldn't do whatever they wanted to. In fact, where the government would step in and place laws upon businesses that would limit their freedom, their economic freedom to do whatever they wanted to. Some people went even further. We saw some laws being passed down here. Some people went even further. And they said, we should set up a society where no one gets treated like this in factories, where no children or women are working at 10 years old or in young ages. And a movement begins that we know as socialism. These people thought that business owners had too much power in society and that their mistreatment of workers needed to stop. And some people thought maybe the government should own businesses. And then the profits that the government made could be given to the people to try and feed them, give them clean water, a place to stay that wasn't rat and roach infested. And in this very early stage of socialism, in the time period, say, I don't know, 1830s-ish, we're going to call Utopian Socialists. These people thought that businesses, the owners of the businesses should share the profits with the workers, that everyone should have an equal relationship in society. Utopian socialists. And there were actually a few cities that were built in that model, where there would be a factory that built housing for its people, that moved everyone out there into an open area of the country and tried to have a classless society out there where everyone was equal and everyone had food on their plate and a roof over their head and you know, a few days, at least one day off a week for church, but get home in time to spend some time with the family, enjoy your life a bit. But this is not going to work. Okay, but these utopian socialist societies will not work. They will fail. But the idea is out there. And we're going to find that a few decades later, a guy named Karl Marx has some ideas about socialism that are a little more radical. He says the workers should rise up against the business owners and take them over. That idea won't be popular at this point either, although 50 years later, the Soviet Union is going to find those ideas to be really popular. But towards the turn of the century, in the late 1800s, we're going to see a movement called evolutionary socialism begin. And what that really means is that you vote for someone who kind of has socialist views. Maybe he or she wants to give you an old age pension. Yeah, some money when you retire. Or maybe disability insurance. So if you get hurt at the job, you'll get some money there. Or maybe a 2-day weekend. Could you imagine giving these workers 2 whole days off on the weekends? Or even more revolutionary, an 8-hour workday. Oh my gosh. The profits lost if you had to pay people overtime for working more than 8 hours. Unimaginable to the poor business owners. But these ideas will become the basis of our modern society. And again, I mentioned this before, this discussion is a discussion about the beginning of our modern world. And we're starting to see a world takes shape that we can recognize.